concerned about the use of drones, you too will get in touch with your congressional delegation about this. What else can you do? Well, Jim is talking about on Saturday going up to Kalakaloa, the training area, the area that's 5 times bigger than Ko'olawe, as you pointed out earlier today. A huge area here on your island that is used for military training exercises, and that now has a drone base. There are drones right here on the Big Island, and that are used in training programs. So if you would like to go up and stand to say that you are concerned about the drone program, we would love to have you come with us on Saturday. And you'll be joining people really around the country, because in the next 3 weeks we'll be having demonstrations in front of the CIA on killer drones. We'll be having a drones walk from Baltimore, Maryland to Washington, D.C., January 17th through the 20th, and this is part of the lead up to the inauguration. At Beale Air Force Base, January 28th, there will be a potluck and an encampment at Beale Air Force Base by the folks who have, from the Bay Area, that have been challenging Beale. Madison, Wisconsin, at Camp Douglas, Wisconsin. They'll be going up there. They go up the last Tuesday of every month. The monthly Death Walk in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is going to be about drones this next week. And on February 5th, at Hancock Air Force Base in Syracuse, New York, the first Tuesday of every month, will be a demonstration. On Inauguration Day, there will be a drone march in Washington, D.C. So there are people all over our country who are getting out on the streets, who are talking to others about these drones, who are trying to create actions where local newspapers will take a picture of people in front of a military installation or a place where drones are being operated from, in order to get the publicity in your own media, so that your fellow citizens will hopefully start asking some questions about what's happening on these military bases concerning drones. And it's not only the military that we have to be concerned about in drones, it's us as civilians too. You know, the U.S. Congress authorized the FAA to open up enough airspace in the United States so that they can integrate 30,000 drones into commercial airspace by the year 2016. So there are now 6 areas that are being designated for practice areas where drones will be flown in with commercial aircraft, and hopefully nothing happens back. But in Afghanistan, we have had U.S. military drones that have run into U.S. military aircraft. We have had U.S. military drones that have crashed. Let's see, one of them crashed in, Iran. Remember when that happened? The most secret of all of U.S. drones, one of them crashed in Iran, and the Iranians are probably reverse engineering that one. One of the CIA's drones crashed outside of Patuxent, Maryland, at a training area there that they have. So we as civilians, we're going to be affected by large drones that are flying in commercial airspace in the next 3 years. So if you're concerned about that,
what are they saying they're doing that for?
well, the reason that they want to be able to integrate up to 30,000 drones into commercial airspace is because the drone lobby is very big. The drone industry wants to be able to sell lots of drones. And they are already starting a big program to sell them to law enforcement. Law enforcement agencies are selling them, are buying them. The other agencies of the U.S. government, for example, Immigration and Customs, have drones. 3 of them right now are on the southern border of the United States, on the Mexican border. One is on the Canadian border. The Border and Customs want to get, I think it's 10 more drones. So far, they're not weaponized. They're surveillance drones. So this is big industry now. The drones are are the next generation of aircraft that big military industrial corporations have seen the handwriting on the wall. The U.S. government is going to be using lots of these, and they want to sell them, and they want to be able to integrate them into commercial aerospace. So that's the reason that the FAA has been ordered by the Congress to open up this airspace. So there are a lot of reasons we should be concerned about these particularly weaponized drones. The other part of it is just surveillance drones, where, as we've seen over the last 10 years, the invasion by the U.S. government into our daily lives, into the watching, seeing what we are doing in so many different ways. And of course, some people always say, well, if you're doing something wrong, you ought to be caught, and those will help catch. But that really wasn't the foundation on which our country was built, that the government has the right to just keep sneaking and peeking into every aspect of our life. And if we don't push back on that now, we can see where it's gone in 10 years. And if we don't push back now, we are definitely, Big Brother will be sitting right in the seat next to us all the time. So with that, why don't I end my part of the presentation and then ask for your comments and your questions. Thank you very much.
So that was wonderful, Ann. Thank you so much. So I'll just direct questions to Ann and field them, so she doesn't have to worry about that. So I know that many of you probably have some really great questions. Okay?
Yes. Good evening, Colonel. Thank you for coming. My name is Teddy. Up until recently, I was still on active duty for 14 years. I worked for the NSA and personally involved with a lot of things that you were talking about.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
I appreciate
you
coming
next.
I appreciate you coming out to talk to us. One of the things I wanted to ask about was, it has to do with legal precedent. That's something that troubled me while I was still on active duty, with the killing of Anwar al-Awlaki. As you know, he was a U.S. citizen, and one of the things that troubled me was that he functioned much as we have the U.S. Chaplain Corps does with the United States military, in the sense that he was a non-combatant who provided moral aid and support to combative troops of a different ideology and one opposed to us, but he was not actually a clear and present threat to the United States, which is part of the legal precedent for military action. My question is why is there not enough agitation towards, by civil liberty groups, ACLU or others, towards seeing where this moves us as a country towards legal jurisprudence? If you can target somebody for something that's, I don't mean to be too Orwellian, but a thought crime. He had a bad idea and he put it out there. What does that mean for us and our society, and why aren't our civil watchdog groups being more assertive in trying to combat that? Because a thought crime is something that can happen well within the United States borders, and if they can say we have the ability to do extrajudicial killings because we don't feel like being inconvenienced enough to go after somebody because we don't like their ideology, where does the spectrum slide in the next 10 to 15 years, and why aren't enough people advocating towards this? I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. That's an excellent comment and question. And I totally agree with you. I mean, these are essentially thought crimes. These are speech crimes. And we have a whole history of jurisprudence on speech, on what constitutes hate speech, threat speech, whatever. But we've seen that deteriorate too. That indeed intimidation and entrapment is something that's going on big time here in the United States, where a lot of people who are now going before the courts have not done one action against the United States, but have been entrapped by FBI informants who, in order to get paid, need to entrap somebody. And if you're kind of not thinking right, if you're not, well, there are just so many things that have happened where no one has actually done a concrete action toward it. What are the civil rights groups doing about this? Well, the Al-Awlaki family was the Center for Constitutional Rights, which is a big human rights group out of New York City that's worked a lot with the detainees, the prisoners in Guantanamo, and other groups of people. They actually were the ones that, in a way, I thought that what you were talking about was something that was taken from their brief that they turned into the court about why this man, Al-Awlaki, should not be targeted. That if they wanted to capture him and bring him before court, that's one thing. But don't kill him outright for things that he's talking about. The ACLU has filed numerous cases against the United States government for information about what is going on and about specific cases. All of those cases have essentially been thrown out of courts by the federal court. And the last one that did was just 2 weeks ago, where the judge, and this is well worth reading because the judge has said, I cannot rule because my hands are tied. The government has tied my hands because of classified information to the extent that I cannot even tell you why my hands are tied, and this is almost like a circus. That's what a federal judge wrote about how, when she was asked to rule on the question of the ACLU and other groups getting information out of the government about the drug program. So part of it is that unless you're really attuned to this, you don't see the articles that are coming out about it. They're not on the front page of any newspaper, that's for sure. But there's a lot of writing that goes on behind, between Common Dreams, Truth Out, War is a Crime, Huffington Post, Democracy Now.
MP Wheel's a good one too.
Okay.
RCB
Thank you. So all of these types of online news media will carry things about it, but you really have to dig for it. There's a website called No Drones, that will have a lot of the materials in it. But it is of great concern to civil rights groups about what's going on. And anything you can do to support them. There have been quite a few studies that have been done on drones. One of the latest ones was by Stanford University Law School. They have an excellent analysis of what's going on, particularly on the drone strikes in Pakistan.
Pardon me. I appreciate you answering my question, Colonel. Just as an addendum, 2010, 2011, I was personally off the coast of Somalia, the Horn of Africa, in the Gulf of Aden, where we were flying Harriers and CH-60s into Somalia and Yemen for targets. So it's not just drones, which is my point. These kind of combat operations continue with multiple vectors of aircraft, and they only show up on page C26 of the newspaper for one day and they're gone. So drones are getting a lot of press, but they're not the only way these kinds of missions are happening.
Thank you.
And that's
Now
just as an addition.
Obama is
Thank you.
commending them to Mali. He's already said that yes, this will provide.
And let me just, before we go into this one, in the drones that many of them go into Yemen and Somalia go out of a military base that we have now in Djibouti.
Camp Lemonnier.
Yes, and then another base that we have now is down in the Seychelles, in the Indian Ocean.
Oh my God.
And the United States now has a drone base in Australia. Now, what are we doing with the drone base in Australia? Actually, we don't have any drones that are there yet, but the base is already being built, and we've already deployed 2,000 Marines to Australia. Yes, sir.
I guess maybe we're trying to give a new meaning to the term kangaroo court. But Bradley Manning, of course, is a symbol of what could be possible with understanding what we're doing. We wouldn't know many of the things that have been done without his heroic efforts, or that he's been alleged to have done. The effort now is for the government to slam the door shut on that, and our press is complicit in this. My question is, how can we fight that? It's the press. It's our information services that are putting out the propaganda that's giving us making our populace quiet about all of these operations. And now in South America, I mean, we took over Honduras, we took over Paraguay. I mean, our CIA is just out of control as far as the U.S. ethic is concerned. We no longer have an ethic. I think that was the point you were trying to make, and we got to bring that ethic back.
Well, you mentioned Bradley Manning. His court-martial has now been moved from February into June. His lawyer, David Coombs, has been doing quite a remarkable job, in my opinion, of in these pre-trial hearings that have been going on for the last year, of trying to get as much information out of the government as possible before the court-martial takes place. If you would like to assist in giving Bradley Manning the best opportunity possible for all of the information to come out for his court-martial, contributions are still needed, and the Bradley Manning support group would be very appreciative of any help you can give. And you mentioned that, we wouldn't know a lot of things about what goes on, what our government has been involved in without WikiLeaks. I travel around the world a lot and speak in a lot of different countries, and it is amazing. If you think, what we found out about what our government was doing, and then what the citizens of other countries found out about what their country was doing with the United States, is really remarkable. And in most countries, they have a much better view, or a much wider view of what was going on because their newspapers published it. El País in Madrid, Spain, published for 30 days an entire edition on just what WikiLeaks had provided about the Spanish government and the U.S. government. They had 20 reporters down in the basement of their newspaper that just kept going through the thousands and thousands and thousands of cables that had been released through WikiLeaks. Here we got maybe 2 days of it, and then if you know how to get to them online, and if you yourself want to go through the indexes, it's amazing what you can find out in there. It's really amazing. Julian Assange, of course, is still in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. I will be seeing him next week, definitely by Skype, or maybe in person. I'll be going to London next week for a whistleblowers conference, so to speak. We're giving an award to a CIA person who is now retired, who wrote the National Intelligence Estimate in 2007 on the nuclear program in Iran. If you remember, in 2007, George Bush was the drums were beating for war or attack on Iran, and then here came out this National Intelligence Estimate that said that there is no evidence that the Iranian government has a nuclear weapons program. And that just pulled the rug out from under George Bush. And he writes in his memoir that he couldn't believe it, that here, how could this analyst, the head of the team, how could they have put that in there? And yet, he did. And I can't even remember his name. I'm just having a blank. Fingard, yes, that's right. Thomas Fingard, thank you. So several of us, Ray McGovern, myself, Colleen Rowley, an FBI whistleblower, Catherine Gunn from the UK government, Craig Murray, a former ambassador, UK ambassador to Uzbekistan that exposed U.S. torture. It was deemed being done by the Uzbeks. Thomas Drake, the NSA analyst. We're all going over to London to be there, and then Julian will be Skyped into Oxford University, to the Oxford Union, where the presentation will take place, and then the following night, Ray McGovern and Craig Murray will do one of the Oxford Union debates. And so it should be quite a time, and we're hoping that we might be able to get in to the Ecuadorian embassy in person to give our